Welcome back. Welcome back, Travis. Glad to have you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Katie Merrill. I'm the Dean of Admissions. So I think we're gathering. I was wondering if folks, well, first and foremost, I want to wish you, it's National Law Day. So happy Law Day. May your life be full with law or policy. So welcome on National Law Day. I think this is a sign for all of you that this is the chosen career for you. So welcome. I was wondering if people could, and I know some of you, I recognize your names, but put in the box where you're from, if you're an admitted student, what program. If you could put that in so I can see who's on board, if you're applying this year or 2025, and then we have an idea. If you want to pop that in the chat, that would be terrific. Again, welcome to our session on Vermont Law and Graduate Office of Career Services. And we are a small independent law school located in Vermont in the Green Mountain State. I usually have it in my background, but since everybody had their offices today, I don't. I usually have the trees, very similar to what you see in the slide. We also have our residential JD program, residential master's programs, and we also have online JD programs and online master's programs. We're really dedicated to the issues facing the world today. And it's a great place and a great place to not only learn the law, but experience the law. So with that, I'm joined by Eli Gleason. He is the director of our career services. Susan Buchanan, who is our associate director of career services. And Susan works a lot with our online hybrid JDs. And our special guest today would be Dean Locker, who is heads our experiential learning program. So welcome you all. Welcome. Oh, and here we have everybody in here applying ASAP. I always love people who apply ASAP. Great. Connecticut. So wonderful. So a lot of good peoples. Now here's the thing. We're taking questions. Eli, I don't know if you prefer to go through the slides and then take questions at the end, or if people want to raise their hands during, what would you prefer?
Yeah, I'm happy to keep it pretty open. If people have questions, feel free to raise your hand, and we can get to them right then and there. Also happy to take questions at the end as well if you want to wait.
All right. So with that, I am going to pass it on to Eli.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie, and thank you all for attending. Happy to talk about all the wonderful things that Career Services offers our students. I'm Eli Gleason. I'm the Director of Career Services. I'm also joined by my colleague, Susan Buchanan, who's the Associate Director of Career Services. I work with a lot of the residential JD students. I also work with OHJD students sometimes. I'm also very familiar with the joint degree program. So that's if you are getting a JD and a master's degree at the same time. I'm an academic advisor for those students as well as a career counselor. So we wear a lot of hats at VLGS, and I'm very happy to talk about all of them. My colleague Susan works primarily with OHJDs, as Katie suggested, but we're all a team here. So if you're a residential student, it's great to know Susan. She's great to talk to, get to know. She comes from private practice here in Vermont and has worked there for many years, has a specialty in food and ag. I myself was a JD student, and actually Susan was as well. I graduated in 2015, and am happy to talk about my experience with that as well. With that, I'm just gonna go on to our mission. Our mission at Career Services is relatively simple. We are here to help VLGS students use their time to set themselves up to accomplish their professional goals. And we do that many ways, but kind of the three main ways is we work with you one-on-one. We want to help you develop a plan when you get here. And that can be a plan for the next 3 years. That can be a plan for the next 5 years. That can be a plan for the next, month and a half. We are here to help you think about why you're here, what you want to do, and how you can get yourself there. I would also say that, your plans are going to change. So we may be developing many plans over the time that you are here, and that's okay. There's a lot to do, and we'll get to some of that later on in the slideshow, but we understand that you are coming here to do something really important. You are here to accomplish what you want to do as a lawyer or a legal professional, and we're here to help you support that. Another thing that we do to help ensure your success is we ensure that you have access to essential resources and experiences. This includes this includes things like application review, professionalism tips, networking tricks, things like that. Sort of the traditional things that you would think about career services for. But it also includes working across departments. And it's great that Dean Locker is here because we work a lot with the externship program and the experiential program to, number one, secure externships, to help you think about if you want to do a clinic, to think about summer internships, conferences, academics, all sorts of important things that will help you develop the experiences and gain the resources that you need to be successful. And finally, the last bucket that I would mention here is we work really closely with you to secure you've got 2 summers for most of you if you're in the residential program. A little different if you're an OHJD, but we're happy to help you navigate those 3 summers as well. But essentially, we are here to help you secure a summer internship. And we do that both by sourcing the jobs and sending them out to you individually and through various newsletters and through our database. And then most importantly, and kind of the reason why you came to law school, we are also here to help you navigate finding a job after you graduate. And again, we do that by working with you one-on-one and making sure that you have access to everything that you need to do that. Finally, I would also add that we are here to answer some of the questions that arise on a day-to-day basis. So, they can be sort of on a professional or academic sort of plane, or they can be just, things that are impacting your life and ability to be here at VLS and be successful. So, maybe it's a question about, oh, I've got to deal with summer funding, or, I've had, maybe I've, done really well in a class, and how do I put that on my resume? Maybe it's, I didn't do so great in a class. How do I put that on my resume? Or, oh my gosh, I have an interview tomorrow. What are some things that I need to be prepared for? And what do I need to wear? How do I need to look? How do I navigate that? We are here to provide that advice as well. And those things come up all the time. So, Susan? Oh, you're muted.
I am jumping in now. Hi, I'm Susan. Glad you're all here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we sort of work with you in a general way. when you look at our website or look at our catalog, VLGS has so many amazing opportunities beyond the academic offerings, all the interesting classes that you see. There's clinics, externships, journals, moot court, clubs in tons of areas, student clubs, different degrees and concentrations, lots of things you could do. So the choices in both deciding to come and once you get here are overwhelming. And though many students try, it is impossible to do everything. So as your advisors, we are here to help you decide how to best spend your limited time, your 3 years. In the case of the online hybrids, it's 3 full years part-time plus a semester. But that may sound like a lot, but it goes super fast. So we're here to help you sort of navigate, okay, which direction do I go? How do we do that? So as Eli mentioned, we work with you from the time you arrive as a 1L until after you've graduated and found your first position. And in some cases beyond that, and in some cases well beyond that. Once you are, I'm living proof of that. Once you are a part of the VLS community, we're here for you. So you can always just give us a call. We are here to advise and talk through all the tough decisions you have to make. As career counselors, we also advise you academically, like what classes to take when, in what sequence, help you evaluate all the decisions you have to make throughout your law school career and as you go into your career. So short-term and long-term considerations. In many cases, we have experience with making these decisions ourselves. We've been there. So we understand what will be most important to you while you're in school, but also what's important to employers down the line. I think one thing that's kind of really important about the career advising we do is that we really provide you a neutral and experienced perspective. Ultimately, these choices are up to you, what you want to do with your life, with your professional career, but we can help you weigh the pros and cons of your circumstances, your interests, your strengths, etc. And you should always know that changing your mind is okay. We have many students that begin at VLGS thinking their goal is one thing, only to discover a secret passion or a talent that's in a completely different direction. And this is not a problem. We are here to help you think about the next steps if you want to pivot towards a different focus, or incorporate it into your grand scheme and your plans. On the bottom of this slide, you'll see our equation for success. So that's going to be on the next slide. But in general, we have found that there are 6 key things that students need to do while they're in law school that will set them up for success after law school. In some cases, students accomplish this simply by attending classes. Others require a little bit more thought and planning. We call this the equation for success, and it is our goal to help students touch on each of these areas throughout your law school career. We think if you do this during your time here, you'll be well situated to move towards your professional goals upon graduation. Eli, if you could move on to the next slide. Okay. So here you see our diagram, the equation for success. So the first one at the top, learn the law. This seems obvious, but to be marketable, you have to have the substantive background to do the work for the jobs that interest you and the jobs you're going to get. And this is not about grades. It's about making sure you gain the knowledge you need in the areas of law and or policy that support your career goals. The second one there on the right, as you go around the circle, hone your legal skills. So we encourage you to embrace all research and writing classes, seek additional opportunities for research and writing and speaking about legal policy that interests you, but to give you practice, because in essence, this is what you're going to do as a legal professional, through things like journals, research assistants, writing competitions, moot court, etc. The third one there is gain hands-on experience. So this is, Dean Locker is going to talk about this at the end of our presentation, but this can include externships. So the experience you get during school. It also can include summer jobs, so internships, community work. Employers want to see that you can do the work before they're going to offer you a job. For online hybrid, JD hybrid students, most of you, a lot of you, at least the current class, are professionally working. So you're doing this part-time. So you already might be gaining professional experience. It might not be legal experience per se, but you're in a respective, you're in your job and you're gaining workplace experience, which is going to be great for you as you graduate. Our goal later in law school for the online hybrids is to try and weave in legal experiences if that's not what you're getting in your current job. And then the next one around the corner, establish professional ties in the geographic area or areas that you're interested in working. So where do you ultimately want to be? You likely have a network there if it's where you are now. If this is where you want to plan to stay and practice law or work, we should start networking. Either with the local bar, organizations you might be interested in, but those things can start while you're in law school. And then the fifth one there around near the top, develop soft skills. So you start to develop during law school the things that show that you have developed as a professional, skills you need to be an effective colleague, like team building, communication, adaptability, conflict resolution, those kinds of things. And then, of course, the last one there is pass the bar exam. So you want to do the things, get the certifications you need to do what you want to do. So pass the bar exam, get licensed, whatever's required in the state where you're going to practice law. And some of you might have extra licensures that you'll need to get if you're interested in patent law or something like that. But that's essentially our equation for success. And we feel like this really has proven to be a successful roadmap for getting students jobs upon graduation.
Yeah. And the one thing that I would add to that is it doesn't really matter what degree program you are in. If you do all 6 of these things as part of that program, you will be well situated for success afterwards. All right, so I kind of touched on this already a bit, but I just wanted to emphasize a few other things and talk a little bit about our, sort of day-to-day services at Career Services. So the first thing that I wanted to add is that a big part of what we do is actually individualized advising. So again, this is both on the academic and the career side. So we are here to help you during the academic advising season. So when it comes time at the end of your first year to start picking out classes and thinking about what your map is going to look like for your 2L and 3L years, we are all academic advisors, and we are here to help you think about, okay, when should I take evidence? When should I take my appellate advocacy class? When should I, think about doing the MPRE? All of that is something that we are here to help you do. Yes, there's a question.
Hi, Mr. Gleason. My name's Kate. I just had a question. Is there an underlying expectation for coming into the first year knowing what area of law you want to practice, or is it okay to be kind of unknown at the time?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Essentially, your 1L class curriculum is pretty set. It's sort of general foundational classes. So they are the type of classes that you will need no matter what type of law you eventually decide to focus on. There are a few exceptions, like if you are interested in environmental law, some of you may have the option to take an environmental class. your first or your second semester. But by and large, the first year is going to be your foundational coursework. Thereafter, however, it's going to be up to you to sort of chart your course. If you decide that environmental law is the way you want to go, wonderful. We have many course offerings in that area. If restorative justice is more your speed, we have many classes in that direction as well. And, we also have many students that they take, criminal practice and procedure, for example, and they decide that well, I came to law school thinking environmental law was going to be my main area of focus, but criminal law is just really interesting and I love it. Or perhaps that happens for a family law course, or immigration law. We have many students that do that. So you do not have to know what you want to do coming in. I think that leads back to what I was saying before is we're here to help you sort of navigate that. And if you decide after your 1L year or after you take, land use, that's what you want to do, we're here to help you sort of hone in and focus on that, and think about what sort of your next steps are to get you going in that direction. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. I have a couple different directions I'm interested in. That's why I wasn't sure because I've spoken to a couple of friends that are attorneys and they're like, well, you should have a mindset, even though you might change your mind. And I was like, well, I have a couple. So I wasn't sure how that would go. So that's why I wanted to ask you.
I think that's great advice from them. I would, so when I'm advising students, what I say is that absolutely we need to have sort of a course in mind, like a pathway in mind. But that doesn't mean you can't take those feed your soul classes. So if there's a class that you're dying to take or are really interested in, yeah, we can try and fit that into your schedule and see if it's a good fit. But I do think like having that general idea of how you want to go forward is going to be really helpful. So yeah, I think it's trying to find a good balance between having that mindset of, this is what I came to law school to do. This is ultimately where I think I'm going to go, as well as the, occasional, experiment, which is really, really kind of a nice way to explore something that you might not be familiar with. And as I mentioned, sometimes those experiments turn into a completely new avenue of focus and students really like them. And that turns out to be what you end up doing. So valuable experience. This kind of leads back to the point that I was making in that there is significant overlap between your academic and career plans. And so we take a really holistic view when we're advising students, and we want to think about them both. So it's essential that you think about them both at the same time, think about them, what's going to happen 5 years down the road, what's going to happen next year, what am I going to be doing this summer? So what you do while you are a student really matters. And the knowledge and experience that you gain during the duration of both the degree program and while you're at VLGS can really help boost your ability to sort of accomplish the career goals that you've set for yourself. We are here to sort of help guide and advise you on those. For application materials and review, we also do those career services, stereotypical, oh, they just look at your resume and application materials. Yes, we do that. We would encourage you to use us more for that. We want to make you look good for those employers that you're applying to. We want to make sure that you really put your best foot forward, have really well-polished materials. And part of that is because, your application materials, your resume, your cover letter, they are what can set you apart. And once you get in the door, they are sort of the key to that. Once you get in the door, that's when you can really shine, and when you can really show that you are going to be able to do what you want to do while you came to law school. So we have to get you over that hump and get you talking with the employers, because what we found is once VLGS students are able to talk with employers, employers just love them. And so really, we are here to help you do that.
Eli,
Yeah.
let me just add that for the online hybrid JDs, a lot of them come with professional experience and polished resumes already, but we still encourage them to show us their resume, have us work with them on their resume, their cover letters for legal jobs, because the legal resume and the legal resume in particular is pretty different than than a business resume, than other professional resumes. So it is a pretty traditional resume. So often the resumes in other sectors are a little more interesting. I don't know. There's a lot more graphics and there's a lot more creativity involved in other sectors. The legal resume is somewhat formulaic. We still like to tell a story of who that person is in your resume, but it is a legal resume and follows some certain parameters. So we really want to work with the OHJDs on their application materials.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, absolutely. The legal resume is a little bit different. And certainly we can help you come up with a good format for it. For employer and alumni connections, so we do a number of different programs for this. First of all, we work very closely with our alums. We often, I would say on a daily basis, we are reaching out every day or are hearing from our alums. We are, in fact, alums ourselves. So we have a very strong connection with our alumni network, and they are both offering jobs, offering summer internships, offering great advice. So we work with them all the time. We also have a number of programs. As a 1L residential student, you'll be able to participate in the mock interview program, which is a program that we put on every year. It is kind of this really cool, exciting kickoff to the summer hiring process. What we do is, over the course of your first semester, first, we ask that you submit your resume. Then over the course of that semester, we meet with you and we help review it, edit it, make sure that it's well polished and in a good traditional legal format. And then starting in January, we match you with an alum who you get to sit down with for a half hour. Usually we do it all on a Friday, so it's this big sort of event. And you sit down with them for a half hour and you get to have a really fun conversation. Typically, the alum is somebody who is doing something that is either of interest for you or has some shared background with you based upon your resume and in our conversations. And they're really interesting people. They're also very kind and not scary at all. But they can give you some really great advice about your interviewing skills. Or if you like, you can just treat it as a conversation with an alum who's doing something really interesting. After that, there's a big networking session so that you can meet all the other alums that have come to campus. So it's kind of a fun way to sort of practice your networking skills, make sure that you are ready for an interview. You have your interview attire. You are set to go. And after that, the spring hiring season pretty much kicks off. So you're going to be interviewing for spring internships, which seems early, but it happens fast. So that's kind of a fun little program that we have. And then there are just a number of other networking opportunities that happen throughout your time, whether that's conferences, or if there's symposium here at the law school. I have a colleague who is very excited about networking and professionalism. So she would probably say you should always be networking. So yeah, we are very happy to talk about that. Finally, so resources and databases. So this is kind of the boring part, but we do have an employer database. We have, over 4,000 employers in it. We have a very robust on-campus interviewing program. We have a couple hundred employers who sort of cycle through every fall and spring, and they hire students every year. We have other resources and subscriptions that cover a wide range of areas. So if you have a particular interest area, we can probably find something for you to look at.
Eli, can I just interrupt for just one
Yes.
second? We do. I noticed that our audience here, we seem to have majority of the students are online hybrid JD students, and I know some of the answers to your questions are different for the residential students as opposed to online hybrid. And I wonder if going forward, you could make sure to highlight both differences and the timing for each group.
Yes, of course. So we do, we try, of course, to have similar programming for OHJDs as well. We do mock interview program or mock interviews with OHJDs. We found that at least this year, we have found that the OHJDs were not as interested in a mock interview as some of the residential students were, for a number of reasons. But if an OHJD would like to do a mock interview, we are very happy to set that up and include them. And I'm sure Susan can talk more about that.
Yeah, I would say that I think I try to decipher whether a mock interview is wanted, one. Even if it's not wanted, I try to work with the student to figure out if maybe it would be a good thing to practice. And with that said, if they have if students have any job applications and then interviews for those jobs, we really encourage to do mock interviews with us for that particular job for all students. But I've done many with the hybrid students. Even if they're seasoned professionals, they have found it valuable to do a practice interview. They could be seasoned professionals that haven't interviewed for quite a bit of time. And in addition, they're going into a new field. So it's one of the things we do a lot of mock interviewing. So it's available to the hybrids too.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight a few other things. I know in many cases, admission gets a lot of questions about where VLGS students actually go. And so this is data from the class of 2023, which we just finished up this data. But essentially, we have about a quarter of our students end up going to work at law firms. In most cases, those are small to medium-sized law firms, but we also have several students that go every year to the large, big law firms. So if that is an area of interest to you, we can certainly talk more about that. We also have about a third of our students, which is we are I was just at a conference myself, and we are fairly well known for this. But we have about a third of our law students that are going to judicial law clerkships. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what a judicial law clerkship is, essentially it's a 1-year position where you work really closely with a judge. And essentially you are their legal staff attorney, where you are working on their briefs. You may be doing legal research. You get to sort of maybe run their docket a little bit. It's a very interesting job, and it sets you up really well down the road for whatever you want to do, whether that's working for the government, working for a law firm, doing another judicial clerkship. It can be just a really fun way to sort of cap your career as a law student. We also have about a fifth that are going to work for federal, state, or local governments. Within that number, there are a number of like prosecutor positions, but we also have many students that go into federal agencies, state agencies, and that is a little bit higher than most other law schools. We also have another fifth that are going into public interest and nonprofit areas. And so this includes, of course, nonprofit organizations like the Conservation Law Foundation, which is a regional nonprofit here in New England, could be national nonprofits. We also have a number of students that go into public defender positions, which fall into this category. Lastly, we have a number of students that end up going into sort of business and other areas. And about a tenth are working in that capacity and are using their JD degree in another way. In terms of where they go, I would say everywhere. So for a little law school in Vermont, we send students everywhere. We have in 2023, we have graduates that end up in 30 states, and then even went so far as going to the territory of Palau, which, funnily enough, I will say is not the first time we've sent students to Palau. So yeah, students go everywhere. In terms of state representation, I always think this is interesting. So Vermont, we had 10 students stay here in Vermont. We had 9 students end up in New York. And then we had 8 students who ended up in Alaska, most of which they were doing judicial law clerkships. And in some cases, they end up staying in Alaska because they fall in love with it. So yeah, we have students that go everywhere. In terms of sort of notable positions, I'll just briefly mention a few. So we had students that ended up at the US DOJ Honors Program, the Environmental and Natural Resources Division. We also had students that ended up at the US EPA Office of Environmental Enforcement. We had students that ended up at the US Department of Energy. We had students that ended up at US Immigration Court. We had 2 Naus Fellows. We also had students that ended up at the New York State Senate. We had students end up as Environmental Regulatory Council at NHESA, which is a nonprofit in DC. We also had a number of students that went to law firms like Morgan Lewis, Squire Patton and Boggs, and any number of other places. Yeah. Yeah, so to sum it all up, we have students that go everywhere. So if you come to Vermont, it does not necessarily mean that you have to stay in Vermont. Although I will say, some of us like to say that you can come to Vermont and you either fall in love in Vermont or you fall in love with Vermont. So it's a good possibility that you could stay here too. Lastly, sort of before I turn it over to Dean Locker, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, I'm happy to turn it over to Dean Locker.
Hi, everybody. I am delighted to be here. I know there are a few questions going into the chat, but it looks like Shirley's responding to those. So I think I will take a few minutes to share, and then we can take more questions that are for Eli or Susan, or if there are any for me, if that works as well. I think if Eli stops sharing his PowerPoint, and if any of you are willing, I know some of you may not be, but I'd love to have any of you. Oh, good, great. Because with the PowerPoint down, I can see a few of your faces, and I'd invite any of you who want to turn your cameras on. Oh, I don't even need to be spotlighted. Oh gosh, I'm going to take the spotlight off of me if I can. But if you want to spotlight me, you can. I love seeing your faces. It's so much nicer to be able to talk to you. And believe me, after COVID, I will not judge if your dog has chewed on the corner of your couch or your kids have spilled cereal or whatever. It's just really nice to be able to see a few of you. And plus you get me in a hotel room because I'm at a conference in St. Louis. So I have zero control over what it looks like here. But I'm really delighted that I was able to join you. As it was noted, one of my assorted titles is that I'm the Associate Dean for Experiential Learning at Vermont Law and Graduate School. I also teach in our externship program, so I have a professor title. And I really love it here. I put in the chat where I am from. I grew up in Michigan. I was born in Detroit, and I still have great affection. I go back there as much as possible. But I also practiced in Georgia. I saw a couple of you with ties to the South, and I even saw somebody who's in Missouri, which I'm delighted since I'm in Missouri right now. It's really just a pleasure to see all of you who are interested. And most of you, it looks like, are interested in the OHJD program. I saw one person looking at the residential program, but because of what I saw, I'm going to tailor most of my comments toward the OHJD experiential. I will say one thing I wanted to comment on based on what I was listening to Eli and Susan say. I think it's really important for all of you who are considering coming here. One of the things I love about this place is that we really are here for you long before or long beyond graduation. And I think that's really special. Quite recently, I had an email from a person, an attorney who I actually sometimes work with because the place that this attorney works now sometimes hosts current Vermont law and graduate students as legal externs, but she graduated quite a few years ago. And she was reaching out. I actually know that she worked with another colleague of ours to do a mock interview because she's being considered for a judgeship. And so I love this, when that stuff happens and we see it all the time. And I think it's really special. And part of it is because we are a smaller school. We're more than somewhat. We are a rural school. We build really tight connections, and it's just a really fantastic thing. Another thing that I love, and this has certainly just been a real pleasure for me, is the experiential. We have a real strong experiential program, and I have just had a great pleasure of being able to step into this program. It was strong long before I got here. So I just have been lucky to step in and have the honor of shepherding it along. I've been in the dean role for about 2 years with the experiential program, and we are so proud of it. Obviously, because our residential program has been around since basically our founding. That is how it was built. But now, as the OHJD program is getting stronger and stronger, we are launching that. The experiential program for the OHJD students is really just getting started, because to really be able to get out into the field and get your experiential learning underway, you need to first learn some of the basic law, those core courses, and get some of the skills from legal writing, legal research. So you take a lot of that initially, and then you move into the more experiential. But we do have a lot of things we do. We pride ourselves in all sorts of experiential learning that is broader than just the credits that you're going to need to earn. So there's one very sort of narrow definition of experiential that the American Bar Association uses. They're the accreditors of all the law schools that let you sit for the bar exam across the country. And so every law school out there is going to tell you that you have to have 6 experiential credits. That's the minimum, because that's what the American Bar Association says. And so we do that too. But we make sure you also get it in all these other ways. And you've already heard Eli and Susan talk about some of that. And so there are all sorts of student groups. And yes, some of them are meeting on campus, but they also have all found these ways to really engage a lot of the OHJD students. So like the Student Bar Association is super active, and a lot of the positions allow the online hybrid JD students to run for positions. The journal will allow OHJD students to be a part. And so those are other great ways to get experience. Susan will work with a lot of the OHJD students to find volunteer opportunities to gain some experience, because one thing that OHJD students don't have that our residential students have is those summers off to get a summer internship because the OHJD program is year-round. So those of you who join the residential program would have the summer opportunity. But then if what we're talking about is how you're going to earn those 6 experiential credits, the graduation requirement that you're getting academic credit for, there's really 3 options that the ABA lays out, and it's a simulation, it's a clinic, or it's an externship. And for OHJDs, we are in the process, really, I'm super excited about this set of courses we're developing that are simulations. And so you're really going to be enmeshed in these courses that you are going to be acting as the lawyer, figuring out, you'll be either on, one side or the other. You will act as if you have these clients. You're going to figure out how to issue spot. You will do civil. It will be set up almost as if there's a criminal case brought. You might be on the prosecution side. You might be on the defense side. You will work through all of that. The criminal case will fall apart, but then there will be a civil case. There will also be transactional law. So the person who asked the question about if you have to know what you're interested in, you're going to get a taste of everything so that you have these great skills that you can then translate and carry into all sorts of jobs. Beyond the simulation, there will be externships. I just did a webinar last week for our current enrolled OHJD students on how they can do externships. And I'm already currently teaching externships for our residential students who've been doing them for, I don't even know, 20 years probably. And so our externship program is all across the country. That is current for the residential. That will be true for the OHJD, anywhere with private practice, nonprofit, government. We have a fantastic photo. I love it. It was on our Instagram account. If any of you have been following that, one of our students this past semester, her first day at work in DC, was eating lunch in the government cafeteria, and there was a spare seat at her table. And Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General, came and sat at her table. And it was just a really cool opportunity. And so she had a photo taken with the U.S. Attorney General, and she gave us permission to post it on our school's Instagram account, which was a lot of fun. But the externships go all over the place, and there's a class that we teach with that teaches a lot of different skills, professional identity formation. I just finished teaching that class last week, and I loved it. I mean, it's just so much fun. And then the final option are clinics. The clinics are here on campus. They are, because of the way they are taught, they are really taught, they need to be taught simultaneously, synchronously. So for the residential students, I saw one of you who is thinking about coming residentially and is interested in the RJ work, the restorative justice work. We have our Center for Justice Reform Clinic would be a phenomenal opportunity for that student. And they do really interesting, they're actually doing a lot of immigration work in that clinic as well because of the way restorative practices fit in there, but they also are looking at expungements, pardons, clemency work, and it's really quite interesting work there. And then for the OHJD students, if they chose to come here to South Royalton for a semester, we found a lot of ways to give them some extra opportunities to apply early for those clinics so they could potentially make it work. But the challenge there really is that the OHJD students are nighttime students for the most part because they're part-time students who are working, and our clinics are occurring during the day. So that's why we've really developed for the OHJD students, we're working on these just really fantastic simulation courses, and then the externship program. So I know I don't want to go on too long because I want to make sure you can ask questions, but the experiential program just has all sorts of opportunities, and I'm happy to answer questions about it. And I should say 6 credits is the minimum. We often have students who do more than that. And we have already figured out ways that some of our OHJD students will clearly get more than the 6 credits as well, just like our residential students have.
Dean Locker, what do students gain through these experiential experience? Like, what do you see when someone starts a clinic, an externship, even a simulation? What do you see? What transformation do you see from the students?
Thanks. Yeah, it's a great question. And there's multiple things. So one of them is, of course, just the straight up legal skills, right? And so you are, and that flows so well into the question from this, again, from the student about if you need to be sure about what you want to do, what legal area. I mean, one of the realities is you cannot learn all of the law. Even if you did, the law changes constantly, right? I mean, open any newspaper and you're going to see, or turn on, you know, whatever, listen to any news feed, the law is constantly changing. So what you are learning more than anything are the skills in how to figure out that law, how to follow it, how to interpret it. And so from the time our students start at the beginning of the semester to the time they end, their ability to parse that law, to understand it, and to do it quickly and to pull out the key pieces is just immensely advanced. And so that's a huge piece, is the actual legal skills, understanding the law. And then some of it's going to depend, right, on what they're interested in. So we have a set of students who are very interested in that policy work, in the law change, the advocacy. How do you go in and make those changes to the law? We have another set of students who are super interested in the litigation piece. They want to go after the polluter. They want to change the laws around incarceration, over incarceration in the United States, perhaps, restriction on bodily autonomy, whatever the issue may be. And so those students, some of them, I mean, I love seeing some of these students. We have a ton of students who start at the beginning of the semester who have never spoken in court and are terrified. And so this might even be true with the ones who are starting a simulation. They are afraid to say their name. The judge or the attorney has to prod them to speak up loud enough to be heard. And by the end of the semester, I mean, I have one student who just finished. He picked a jury. He did the whole trial. I mean, they are fabulous. And actually, the one who I'm thinking of right now who just picked his jury, I know that attorney. He was in Vermont. In the county he did his externship in, that county is not going to have a job opening right now when he graduates, but another county does. And so she just gave a referral to the attorney in that other county, suggesting that he consider hiring the student who was an extern who's going to graduate in May, because he did such a phenomenal job. So the skill development is incredible. And then the last thing I'll say, and I know there was a hand, so I hope that person puts their hand back up, is a lot of professional identity formation, figuring out who you are, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. With the externships, with the clinics, you create your own learning plan. So you're going to identify goals that you want to accomplish. You do this with a lot of guidance from your professors. So you don't have to be afraid that this is something you don't know how to do. We guide you with it, but it means you almost have your own personal syllabus for each of those. So everybody gets to figure out what is most useful to me in this setting. Lots of times you're developing some real writing samples that are useful. So it's a real mix. Whoever had the hand up, do they want to put it back up? I'm happy to take another question.
Hi, Dean Locker. It was Kate. That's me. I just did a reaction. It's an applaud reaction.
Oh, good. Sorry.
What you were talking about. It wasn't my hand. I just wanted to explain that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Dean Locker, one thing that I would add is, from our perspective, the amount of growth, like personal growth, that you can see in students that do an externship is astounding. So students come in as 1Ls, maybe they do a clinic, their 2L year. The change there is amazing. And then from there, they go on and do an externship, and they come out of that externship and they are attorneys. For all intents and purposes, they are attorneys when they have done that externship. And so it is a tremendous opportunity. And if you come to VLS, take advantage of it, because it is amazing. And it will set you up so well.
And I'll also say, I mean, the simulation piece that we are really working on to develop for the OHJD program, this is a different level of simulation than we have done before, but it is not wholly new. Like, because we have valued experiential, so many of the professors at VLGS have been practitioners, and that is actually very different than a lot of law schools. There are quite a few law schools where the professors never actually practiced, and ours really have. And so a lot of our courses, some of our legal writing courses, actually most of our legal writing courses, you are sort of enmeshed as a student into a situation. Like, we have this class called Appellate Advocacy, where you actually, the professors have selected a course, a live course before the US Supreme Court, that they find really interesting, and you get put on one side or the other, and you are going to develop a brief on behalf of that side, whichever side you're on. So you're really developing those writing skills, and then you're going to argue it in class. And so that is actually really a simulation course. We have a number of classes that that are really very hands-on, practice-oriented. There's a bankruptcy one. There's this one called Bail to Jail, where you literally are sort of taking somebody at early stages of a criminal case through what that would be like. We have these courses that truly are simulation courses. We just have not in the past counted those for experiential credit. But they are giving you those real hands-on skills so that you walk out the door with your diploma ready to actually do some things useful. If you're paying attention, I know tons of you are on Reddit and other forums, you'll hear lots of people complaining that law school does not actually prepare you to practice law. And we really pride ourselves on trying to not be those people. We do teach you how to take some multiple choice tests, because you need that, because we need you to pass the bar. And so we spend some very serious time preparing you to pass the bar. But we also prepare you with a set of skills to make sure you are ready to practice. And we're really proud of that.
Dean Locker, I'm chuckling because appellate advocacy as online hybrid students, as residency students, it's the same experience. And it feels so real. So because you're arguing against a classmate, you're arguing in front of a panel of judges, and you come out like you're like this. Oh, and not that I kind of, yes, it's fun. I usually say, "Oh, you okay?" But it feels very real. And it's one of our rites of passage here. So we're one of the few law schools that offer 3 full semesters of legal writing, one of which is appellate advocacy. I do want to add to Dean Locker, because we're going to get ready to go, but when you're talking about the bar and experiential learning, because we are a next generation bar research school. We have a webinar on it. You should watch it. It's like the most important thing to happen to legal education, Dean Locker, and it's very closely tied to experiential learning. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then we can let everybody go on their way, because I know you have a dinner.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I do encourage you, if you did not attend when it was Dean McCormick, the other Beth at the law school, Dean McCormick did the session on the next gen bar. The bar exam is changing. Most of us who pay attention to these things are so glad. The current bar really is overwhelmingly a test of memorization skills. And quite honestly, this is my opinion, not the opinion of Vermont Law and Graduate School, but it didn't actually test your ability to practice law. In fact, I would argue that if you don't know the answer to a question and you guessed, you could be subject to malpractice action. So there were a lot of problems with the current version of the bar. And this next gen bar, there will still be some multiple choice, but it is much more experiential. It is much more issue spotting. It is much more hands-on writing, figuring out multiple answers, combining different issues because no client is going to walk into your office and say, "Hello, I have a torts issue for you. Which of these 4 answers is the best one?" And so we have been doing a whole lot of research. We have rearranged our curriculum, and we are building up even more all of our experiential opportunities throughout our curriculum, and really leading the way. Dean McCormick, me, Dean Brennan, a whole bunch of folks, our academic success professors are actually a part of training other schools and other folks and making sure that we will really be a leader and our students will be at the forefront as this new bar rolls out in the next couple of years. So if you haven't seen that webinar with Dean McCormick, I encourage you to take a look.
And thank you. I think Shirley's putting all the links in and our emails in. I apologize. I forgot to introduce my colleagues, Shirley Crawford and Ellen Doobie. So your fine admissions team here. Thank you, Dean McCormick. Thank you, Susan Buchanan and Eli Gleason. We look forward to working with you from admissions to post graduation. And I hope there's someone on this call that calls Dean McCormick and says, hey, can you help me vet for this judge position? Because I would be over the moon about it. All right. Thank you. Enjoy your evening.